Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all an update to my Hexaorb Cardfight Vanguard deck profile for Post-Blazing Dragon Reborn. This was the newest support we got for the Hexaorb Sorceress deck. I was actually surprised by how much support we got in this set via Keter Sanctuary for Hexaorb. A good number of cards compared to some of the other, decks from the older D series, but still very, useful support for the Hexaorb deck in total. Just being able to set up the top of the deck much more easily thanks to the overall playstyle of checking the top cards of your deck and then utilizing the different fronts and critical triggers we get off of our drive checks. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the ride deck, the ride deck is still the same. Our starter being Tri-Connect Sorceress. When rode upon, if you went second, you draw a card. Our grade 1 is Tier Square Sorceress. When rode upon by Pentagleam Sorceress, you counterblast 1 and draw a card. It's the only copy we run in the deck, so it's really the only ability we'll use for this card. Our grade 2 is Pentagleam Sorceress, so getting the draw 1 off of our Tier Square Sorceress. And also, when this unit's rode upon by Hexaorb Sorceress, you can look at 3 cards from the top of your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So that setup can then work very, very well with our main go-to grade 3, which is Hexaorb Sorceress, along with the copy in the ride deck. I'm running 3 additional copies of this card. When your drive check reveals a trigger unit, choose one of your rear guards and it gets plus 10,000 till end of turn. So for each drive check, you can have a potential plus 10,000 additionally on top of the trigger abilities. And on the Vanguard circle once per turn, if you Persona Road this turn, counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, reveal up to 1 critical trigger or front trigger from your hand, put it on the top of your deck, and then you get drive plus 1 till end of turn. So you have a guaranteed drive check that'll have a trigger, and then all the additional ones if you were able to set up the top of the deck with some of the other cards we run. Being a once per turn skill, you can set up all the other cards and then utilize the Hexaorb by having the critical in your hand to use or the front trigger. For the other grade 3, still running 4 copies of Twinned Great Magic Totone. With this card at the end of your battle on rearguard circle that your unit attacked, counterblast 1 and perform all the following according to the triggered units revealed in that battle. If you revealed a critical, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and put it on the bottom of their deck. If you revealed a front trigger, choose one of your grade 2 or less rearguards and stand it. That is your additional attack that you'll gain with this card. So very, very useful to have the premonition to know which one you want to set up and use, whether it's to retire one of your opponent's cards, which always comes in handy with the critical trigger, for just a counterblast, or being able to have that restand after using the front trigger, which you could potentially have attacked with that unit first and then restand it again, having it the additional plus power off of the front trigger. And moving on now to the grade 2s, I run 4 copies of the new Octaray Sorceress. When this unit is placed on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Sorceress in its card name, counterblast 1, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 cards from among them, put them into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you put 2 cards in your hand, choose a card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. And then also on rearguard, during the battle this unit attacked a Vanguard, if you Persona Road, it gets plus 5,000. This is just your initial setup that you'll need. The biggest weakness I found with the Sorceress deck is that you would be short 1 trigger for you to use for your Hexaorb Sorceress. So being able to add both the cards into your hand and then just put 1 on the bottom of the deck means you should be at least be able to reveal a trigger unit off of this card, or even just be able to set it up then thanks to Hexaorb Sorceress' own skill after you Persona Ride. And it's a 1-place skill, that's why we're running 4 of this card, just so we always have a copy to utilize against our opponents. And I also run 4 copies of Quadracast Sorceress. When this unit is placed on rear, if you have a Vanguard with Sorceress and its card name, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put them on the top of the deck in any order, and then Soul Charge 1. Just another way to clear out some of the non-triggers. That's what the Soul Charge 1 is for. Otherwise, you'll have the chance of getting 2 non-triggers, but then you'll at least have 1 Soul Charged thanks to this card. There's no other cost with it. All you have to do is place it on rear guard. That's why I like running 4 copies of this card, because some of the other cards in the deck do take up, counterblasts, whether it be your Octaray or even your Totone or Hexaorb Sorceress herself to begin with. And I also run 3 copies of Exquisite Knight Olwen. When placed on rear, if your Vanguard's Hexaorb Sorceress, Soul Blast 1, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose 2 cards from among them, put them on the top of your deck in any order, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck. So this card just sets up the top of your deck, so just like your Quadracast for that setup, but also just being able to put them on the bottom of the deck also. And also when your drive check reveals a trigger, you can counterblast 1 and it gets plus 10,000 to end of turn. I don't use it as often because the, counterblasts are kind of needed in other skills in the deck, but still being able to set up is a great use with this card altogether. And I also run 2 copies of Design Sister Benny with this card. When placed on rear, if you have a Vanguard or Sorceress in its card name, counter +1, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a normal unit, put it into your hand. So just another way to utilize the normal units, being able to have this card set up those normal units on the top of your deck, and then just draw into them with your Divine Sister. I only run 2 though. It's a more situational play that you make use of, so not often does it happen, but still useful when you have this card to do it. And for the grade 1s, I have 2 copies of Magic of Revelation Torturous. I would run 4 copies of this card if you wanted to. I'm mixing around and testing some of the other grade 1s. This one searches your deck for a Hexaorb, so it prepares you for the Persona Ride when placed on rear if you have a Vanguard that's grade 3 or greater. A lot of the times I've been testing it out just because sometimes when I have my grade 3s all set, this card really doesn't do much else for me. Late game in the hand, I'm mixing around with this and also 2 copies of Changing Magic Memoruru. When on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Sorceress and its card name, retire this unit, choose a critical trigger or front trigger from your drop zone, and put it into your hand. So having the triggered units is much more important, I would say, in the deck, which is why I'm trying to use this recycle card, because if you go through them all, you at least have a chance to recycle some of those triggers with this card also. I'm mixing matching with all the different grade 1s. Potentially, if you wanted to run 4 Torturous, you can also try taking out the Diagon Sorceress. On guard circle, if you have a Vanguard or Sorceress in its card name, it's just a plus 10k shield, making it a 15k shield for extra guards against your opponent. But once again, you can take out 2 of these to put in 2 more Torturous into your deck to run the full copies of this grade 3 Searcher. But I'm mixing around the numbers just for testing. I really do like the Memoruru because this card just provides so much for the recycle power from the drop zone. And then for the rest of the grade 1s, I have 4 copies of Palladium Zeal Dragon, the new Sentinel with the discard restriction. So if you only have the 1 card in your hand, you don't have to discard. If you have the Blitz Order and you want to run it, you can just take out 1 copy of this card for the Blitz Order also. If you have them, like I said, they came out in the trial deck, so a little more hard to get a hold of and kind of pricey at the moment also. So if you just have the 4 Sentinel, it's still fine also. And now moving on to the trigger lineup, I am running 6 criticals, so 4 of the Blade Feather Dragon and 2 White Fang Witch Disma. Now the reason I'm running 6 copies of the critical triggers is because I am also running 5 copies of the front triggers, so 4 Bard of Heavenly Songs and 1 copy of the White Crow Sorcerer Taxis. Now I wanted sort of like a balance for the criticals and the front triggers, so I wanted to get as close as I could with all the trigger lineups, and I stuck to 5 for the front triggers just because the criticals add a little more pressure, just like some of the other lineups, and also still wanted to run a full heal and over trigger lineup also. So got to as close as I could for these front triggers and the critical triggers to be balanced. For the heals, I run 2 copies of the new Palpitation Angel, and then 1 copy of Tear Sorceress and 1 copy of Invigorate Sage for the additional heal options for extra guards, whether you go up against the extra critical unit or the one that restood, with our over trigger being the Amartanoa, so you can have your rear guards gain the drive check as well for even more pressure, especially when we have some of our grade 3s on the rear guard being able to perform twin drive. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like I said, I was very happy with the results of all the new support. It definitely does help with the playstyle of Hexaorb Sorceress, and I hope you all enjoy it as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.